I think it's up and running. Okay, welcome everyone, and to our regular WordPress meetup. Today, as promised, we will be talking about plugins, which is the main expanding area to your WordPress website functionality. My name is Steve. I am WordPress Trimso Meetup co-host and co-organizer. I have IT engineering and web development background, and I'm currently a cybersecurity student, and nonetheless a WordPress hobbyist and semi-professional user. So in today's session we will be talking about plugins, and I just wanted to make a brief explanation for those of you who's not familiar with the nature of plugins. So what WordPress plugins are? Well, as it's quoted by hostinger.com, that WordPress plugins are bits of pre-packaged code made by developers in the WordPress community. They're essential add-ons that extends the functionality of a WordPress site. And there is a very good reason for the developer point that I highlighted in another color, so I will grab into that later in this presentation. But for now, for you to understand plugins more, think about WordPress core software as a brand new smartphone or a laptop for that sense, with the factory settings on. It's usable, but most users install additional apps to enhance the day-to-day use of their device and overall functionality. These apps, in the case of WordPress plugins, are free to download, install, uninstall whenever you like. So there's that. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the main points of this meeting today. So we will be touching on these 5 main points, which plugins are recommended for your website, and it's going to be our personal recommendation. The phase where right after you install plugins and how to manage them, and I'll get more in depth on this point, but testing cycles will be the particular focus point of this meeting. I'm not gonna spoil this one for you, the ugly, so please stay tuned for that. If you're not a developer, and let's face it, developers break stuff, intentionally or not, and using a decent hosting service, your site could crash under 2 main circumstances. First of which, that is the service provider servers goes down, which is very unlikely if you're actually using a decent hosting service, or chances are that you're having a plugin related conflict. And the reason that I'm confident to say that it's the number one reasons that I scratch are, we did have in almost every meetup we had so far, we did discuss something about plugins, and we did observe that people do generally have a very bad relationship, I would say, or at least unhealthy relationship to plugins. So we thought that it's a good point to make this topic and talk about it, and at the same time to focus on that this happened maybe to 3 attendees so far that we do have in our group. Their sites crashed, and the one extreme case that they couldn't access their website anymore because the host was not actually that decent. So this might have very uncomfortable casualties, and that you might lose your work for. The second point that we need to talk about plugins about, it's the functionality and the accessibility. Your audience, your taste, your purpose, all of those are the main point of having plugins. And this is something that evolves and it changes over time. Security hazard. This can be extremely harmful, as I mentioned, and it does not have to be that the plugin by itself is bad, but also that the way you use it and manage it could be the case of making it a security hazard. And of course, the more of this point will be touched on later in this presentation. So I will jump ahead right now and just talk about the plugins that we recommend. Our criteria for these plugins and the five top ones that I will be talking a little bit more in details about is based on our own criteria, like the easy to use kind of criteria, how popular they are in the market, and our own testing experiences. So this is the main criteria that we actually chose these five, and that doesn't exclude that there's much more great plugins out there to use. I believe at this point WordPress do have around 58,000 plus plugins in their market or plugins market. So yeah, there's a tons of plugins out there to explore. So starting with Yoast CEO, and CEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. It's a content analysis plugin, and what gives you a collective benefit of many tools in one. The most used parts of this plugin is the real-time page analysis that can help you optimize pages, content, images, titles, and meta descriptions and keywords. It can also tell Google not to index a page or set of pages, which is very useful. Analyzes the readability of your copy, of checking the lengths of your sentences and the paragraphs, whether you use transition words or subheadings, if you use passive voice too often, and so on. So it can also generate URLs automatically, so you don't get penalized by Google for duplicate content. And it can create readable XML sitemaps and get finer control over breadcrumbs. The premium version of Yoast SEO offers more advanced features, but even the free plugin can help you make a real difference to your site ranking. So what we are saying here that none of these plugins need to be used on the paid version, although some of those are free and open source, as we're gonna be moving into Matomo. This is the one that I am personally using as a replacement for Google Analytics. So this platform is an open source platform, so it's totally free. And for those of you who's not familiar with the open source, it's that the source code and the whole concept of this plugin is free, so you can even take and reuse the source code and modify it if you are a developer and make it to your own use, which is great. A great tool to have access to. But Matomo do offer paid support, so if you need any the good point here is that even though it's an open source, the community that's supporting this plugin is huge, and it's very simple to use, and it's built on the privacy in mind. So it gives you 100% data ownership, so no one else can see your data, because technically if you are a user of Google Analytics, your data is actually belonging to Google and they are just giving you the results out of it. And this is in their privacy policy, which is not something that I would love to go in details on. But yeah, no one else can see your data here. So the data is yours. The data that goes through your website, it's actually saved into your own WordPress. and not sent to any third party or any different country to manage. It's easy to install, and as I experienced, no coding or technical knowledge needed. So anyone can just integrate it, but you need to be careful not to use two plugins that do the same, which is I will be touching soon on. It's, as I said, it's free to use, protects your privacy, protects the privacy of your users too, and it gives you the ability of creating a GDPR manager in your website. It doesn't make any data sampling, so all the data that you get is 100% accurate data. It extends with an ever-growing marketplace that it's actually covering over 1 million websites now, so they do have an extensive use, which is a good thing for plugins to be used that widely. It supports 50 languages, and it comes equipped with the tag manager, and this is a Matomo feature. The third one I will be talking about, this is one of the most popular ones out there in the market, the WB forms, which is WordPress forms. It's a contact form builder plugins. It's easy to use. It's a drag and drop. It's pre-built from templates, so it has, I think there's 100+ pre-built templates that you can just drag and drop and use and modify as you like. Mobile ready, SEO friendly, and optimized for speed. And it has fields and features like multiple page contacts form with progress bar, file uploads, and star ratings. It makes contacts form for job applications, feedback surveys, make suggestions forms, PTO requests, change requests, online booking, and the list goes on. Updraft, and this is the fourth on our list. Updraft Plus, it's a backup plugin. Most of the hosting companies do offer backup options, but this one is free. And you can use it to make a regular backup that you can set yourself, either daily, weekly, or monthly. And it comes with it offers the option that you can redirect the backup to go to any cloud service provider that you might be having an account on or you use regularly, like Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, and many more. And the last one we were talking about, it's a less popular plugin, but it's a very good plugin that I personally use, and it's actually developed by one of our members here in Tromsø Meetup group. This is like a Swiss knife, and I will actually go ahead and give you a tiny understanding here. WordPress plugins. Can you still see my screen? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Machete is a multi-use plugin. You can use it very similar to Matomo. You can use it as a GDPR manager, and it has a lot of useful tools to manage all the privacy aspect and to make your website applicable to the laws of the country that you're resident in and to the international laws of your website, of course. So it's a great plugin. It's not that popular. It's a side project for our member, Nino, I think his name was. And from my own experience, it was great and very lightweight plugin to use. This plugin is not by any means unique, but it has a unique personality that it might be useful for you if lightness is an issue. And of course, this is an extendable plugin too. It's not a commercial plugin. So you can also use the source code and modify it as you like. So, managing plugins. This will be just touching about, let's say that you installed the plugins, how would you manage it? So to manage plugins, first of all, of course, you need to add it. So when you add the plugin, you go ahead to the WordPress plugin library and you just choose the plugin and you add it. When you add it, it goes into your plugin directory in your WordPress website admin. And from there you can either search for plugins, as I said, in the library, you can compare plugins and of course install them. The second step is to maintain a plugin. So, and I will be touching more in depth on that in the upcoming slide. Third of all, removing. Although WordPress provides you with the ability of deactivating unused plugins, for example, most security plugins will interfere with each other and they do also use a lot of resources. So this is the main use of the deactivating option. You don't need to deactivate a plugin that you know for sure that you're not going to be using it anymore, but you can use the deactivation feature to compare and test similar plugins. Maybe you have a plugin that you've been using for a while and it's not valid anymore, or the support stopped for some reason and you need to test another one, or you find something that you think it's better and you need to continue testing it. So you can deactivate temporarily, and afterwards, if you decide to not use the plugin anymore, you can just remove it. So the reason that I'm focusing on the point of removing that is that you don't need those to be hanging around, because it will be also a security hazard, as I will be touching on the next slide. So, testing cycle, and a good reason for calling it a cycle is that this is an ongoing process. So it starts by, and this is very much our personal recommendation. It's not by any means a standard, but this is how I would do it on my website, and this is how I would believe that hypothetical wise plugin person or user have said. The test starts when you first hear the name, which is in many cases true. So first, when you hear the name, you check the ratings of the plugin, you check the reputation of it, you check the update frequency, and you check the feedback. And all of those information are provided when you first search for the name. It's all listed into the plugin description, and you can follow up with all of this from there. And the second phase is to install an experiment, and this you can think about this part as a beta phase, that you get the plugin and start testing it to see if it conflicts with any plugins that you're already using in your website, if it's actually doing its purpose, or it's giving you the benefit that you're looking for. Third point is to think about keeping an eye on conflicts. Try to ask yourself, do I have 2 or more plugins that is managing similar needs, or even the exact same needs? Because this might happen. Sometimes you're using a plugin for a specific task, but it can actually do some extra tasks, and you install another plugins to deal with these extra tasks that you didn't know that the first plugin provide. And these 2 plugins, it is more likely to have a conflict, and this will crash your website in the worst case scenario. After that, you need to get to the point in this fourth point. Do I actually need it? This falls into the compare and search and need of your website and audience, of course. Finally, use it, but don't stop here. It's a cycle, it's a process. You need to continuously focus on looking into your own plugins, the ones that you installed in your website, and manage it. And of course, your needs will expand, your demand will evolve, and you will need either newer type of plugins or totally different type of plugins in the future. And this is just an ongoing process, and this is the best approach, as I say it, that don't keep a plugin that you're not using or you're not willing to manage. So let's talk about the elephant in the virtual room, the ugly. I'm not here to tell you which of the plugins to avoid or not. And if at any stage of the testing cycles a plugin fails, and the fact that it fails gets ignored, your website are probably in danger. Differences, I need to tell you a tiny story about developers. If you remember, I highlighted this from the second slide, the developers. There is not just one type of developers out there. There are hackers that they do actually develop plugins to and disguise it in a useful form, and it actually functions as a normal plugin, but it can have a backdoor. And the backdoor is a bit of code that gives a hacker access to your profile or to the users of this plugins or to the profiles of the users of this plugins. So a plugin can look good, can have decent ratings, not great ratings, but it can actually be malicious. So you need to be thoroughly researching your plugin, and as I said, if something like that being spotted by WordPress, a plugin will not be continued. They will probably ban it if they got to the point to reach that this plugin is actually a malicious code. It's not just meant to be a plugin. But constantly good plugins can be hacked, and that can be added this bit of backdoor code that I mentioned previously. So you need to continuously update your plugins. Think about an updated a plugin that you not update, just like a glass of water that you never drink or you never fill. It just sits there. So the water gets old. It doesn't get bad very fast. It doesn't actually taste bad maybe in a couple of days, but it starts maybe gathering dust, and it starts to get less and less water-like. So this is what a plugin that you're probably not using or probably not being updated will behave. It will gather problems, because usually when they update plugin, any provider, if they update their plugins, it's about patching a security hole or improving the performance of a plugin. So developers out there, not all of them are sweet and trying to be helpful. The good news is alternatives are always available. Sometimes you have a plugin that you do love and you do use, but suddenly the update stops. That's not an issue, because you just need to commit some tiny effort to go into the plugin library and plugins library and just search for an alternative that it has the criteria that we spoke about in the previous slide. So for a plugin to be ugly is not necessarily that it's malicious or bad. It can simply be or become incompatible with many other useful plugins that you like and actually receiving many benefits of. So this is a good point to keep in mind. Always test and go into the testing cycle I mentioned earlier, or do something similar to it, so you can stay on the safe side. So the take of this session, I get it, can be a hectic process. Many of you might think about it as an extra time and an extra added effort to get into your website. But it is simple. And I will argue that it's fun, and don't take my word because I am a developer and I might get geeky about it, but it gets to the point, if you manage it correctly, it begins to become fun because you grab a lot of information about many plugins out there that you can be avoiding in the future too. And you will start having a very good eye and be picky in a good way, so you can be safe always when it comes to your plugins. And the worst case scenario, if you want to compare it, not managing your plugins and uh, managing your plugins. If you don't manage your plugins, the worst case scenario that you can actually lose all of your work. As I mentioned earlier, one of our meetup group members, she is not able to access her website since 2019, and she's trying to hang in on Facebook and for her website, and she was working on her website for 3 years before that. And because that she was not using a decent host, she couldn't access the website. And from the glance that when you try her domain name in your browser, you can definitely see that it's a plugin conflict issue. So it was not the service provider's fault, but it was that the plugins that conflicted. But this is a good point to think about when you need to choose your host and you choose your plugins too. So the take of today is plugins are essential tools meant to expand your website and functionality when handled correctly. You can harness their potential benefits without harming your precious work in the long run. And yeah, that's it for me. The last thing I want to add here, that I did gathered a very useful list of references that you will definitely have good use out of if you're interested in knowing more about plugins, because I can speak for hours and maybe days and weeks about plugins, and I can't be done about how good it is to actually be involved in the process. And these links will hopefully give you the starting point, or at least give you a long-term reference in order to keep up with your plugins, learn about plugins that they are new, and what kind of use you can make out of them. And of course, I've included the link to Kinsta. This website is a hosting website or is a hosting service provider, and they do have a list of banned plugins, and this list is not banned from WordPress, it's banned from Kinsta. It has many good and reasons for their servers, so it's not actually banned like bad plugins, but it will give you an idea of the plugins out there that it's not mostly compatible with WordPress. But even though in this Kinsta link you will find Updraft Plus, the one that I already recommended you to use, but they have it banned because they have a functionality problem in their older hosting websites. So they do actually use it, and you can go in details there about why they would ban the good plugin there too. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for being patient, and on behalf of us at Trimso WordPress Meetup, I hope this meeting brought you the expected benefits. Our doors are always open for your questions, ideas, and requests for topics to talk about. So until next time, stay safe and stay with us if you have any questions, because we're gonna be